Well, as most of you guys already know, the iPhone 6s, first of all, the iPhone 12s are about to get released, and later on in the year, I always love doing these late 2020 reviews of all these devices that I pretty much reviewed early on and even in mid-2020. Now, a lot of phones have happened, a lot of things have happened throughout the whole entire Apple lifecycle support. We've got new iOS versions, we've got new iPhones probably coming out, we've got new iPads, all that stuff, and what I can tell you is that even though the iPhone 6s lives on, there are some really fascinating things about the iPhone 6s that, in my opinion, make it a really cool, unique phone in a lot of different ways. And honestly, even in late 2020, some people may look at this phone and be like, bro, it's like such a waste of a time to even talk about this device. Nobody cares anymore, this and that. But honestly, when I look through my whole entire analytics of every single video I've done throughout this year, for some reason, the iPhone 6s, a lot of people watch those, not a lot of people, but for a majority of my viewers, they like to hear about the iPhone 6s. A lot of the questions that I get sometimes are iPhone 6s related. So it's really interesting to see that type of dynamic with this specific device. Now, this iPhone is not perfect. In 2020, we got iOS 14, just like not even in 2020, like a couple months ago. And I've installed pretty much every single beta on this device. And I think it's been a really good ride for the most part, but there's still going to be problems. This is the oldest iPhone that is technically supported. So that is another big thing to keep in mind. Now, this phone came out in 2015. So it's turning 5 years old this year, which is crazy. Who would have thought that a phone like this would still even be relevant, I still see a lot of people having this type of designed iPhone, and with that 4.7-inch display on this phone, that is something that may turn a lot of people off. And I talked about this in my iPhone 6 video yesterday. It's like, yeah, in a way, obviously the 6S, it doesn't look like the newest and greatest phone, but it's also super interesting to see the dynamic that Apple took this year, early on 2020, where they released the iPhone SE 2020. That was a really interesting thing to see. Now, me personally, I'm probably not going to use the SE2. I have it, I compared it, you guys probably seen the videos. Me personally, I'd rather use my iPhone 11 Pro, but there are people out there who don't really care about the design. If I was on a budget, I honestly wouldn't care that much. I think the most important thing, or one of the more important things, is price per value. The SE2 is a great price per value device since it's costing $400, and that design is the same thing as a 6S. And when I was comparing these two, really the main differences, in terms of the way they feel, was the glass on the back of the SE. Other than that, the 6S still feels like a premium, super premium device, and that is something that I really do like about the 6S. When you're holding this phone, and I'm holding like a Galaxy A51 or something, like I still feel like the 6S feels like a more premium device, even though you can pick one up for like literally like $50 or $100, less than $100 now. It still feels like at least like a $500 phone in my opinion in some ways. You still have that headphone jack on this phone too, which some people may like. I really don't care anymore, but that's more like a novelty factor at this point. And on the back, you have that single camera setup. Now, I've talked about this camera a lot, and I think, in my opinion, this camera is probably one of the better camera sensors that have held the test of time. I just talked about the iPhone 6 camera yesterday. It really wasn't that great, I'll be honest. It was like okay for the most part. I talked about even the iPhone 5 camera. That was good at the time. Galaxy S6 came out the same year. I think the LG G3 or G4 came out the same year as this. This camera, I think, from that time is probably one of the better camera sensors of that year, in my opinion. And for sure, with that 12 megapixel sensor, you can do 4K videos. It still performs extremely well, in my opinion. The video quality looks great. And honestly, like, it's not the best looking camera, obviously. If you're trying to compare this to iPhone 11 Pro or iPhone SE2 even, those cameras are going to be far better. Even with the Galaxy S20, Galaxy S10, these phones are going to be having better cameras. But for the iPhone 6s, for it to be, such a well-rounded device, and for this phone to still have software updates, we look at the Galaxy S6, we look at the LG G4, those devices are not getting software updates anymore. Nobody's really talking about those phones except for me, really. And the fact that the 6s is still even somewhat relevant, and especially relevant in the software department, is something that is really important. And even with iOS 14, we got software improvements for the camera in that software. We have the ability to now change the video resolution in the camera now, and that is something we didn't have before. We have that capability now, and again, another really awesome thing that we have. And shout out to Apple for doing that. We have a 5 megapixel camera on the front. We can shoot 1080p videos on that, and overall a solid camera in my opinion. Definitely, like I said, not the best camera, not the best looking camera, especially on the front, but I still think it was a huge improvement from the predecessor. And I think even now in 2020 it holds up okay, you know, I'm not gonna say extremely well because I say it all the time. It holds up okay in a 2020 sense. So in terms of the camera sensors, that really pretty much covers it up. I think I talked about it quite a bit. Software wise, you know, this is another really huge thing that we have to hit on. It just got iOS 14, and I've been talking about it. You guys probably already seen the videos. They did really well on this channel. And with the iPhone 6s, the best thing about this phone, in my opinion, and one of the most important things to hit on, is the fact that the same day that the iPhone 11 Pro Max and in the future the iPhone 12, 12 Pro, 12 Pro Max, and whatever iPhone they're going to release, all these iPhones get the same exact software updates. And that is something that I literally have never heard anybody talk about for the most part. Some people have started talking about it now. I mentioned it like a month ago or like a couple of weeks ago, and I can tell you that is still one of the strongest attributes of this device. The fact that it gets the same software updates at the same exact time as the most popular phones. I've had phones like my Galaxy S20 right now. Right now it has like a One UI 3 beta or something. I can't even get it installed, but my Galaxy S10 is not supported. The Galaxy S9 is, I guess, not supported anymore, but my Galaxy S10 should be getting that software too at the same time. And even when One UI 3 comes out for everyone, Android 11 comes out, it's not going to come equally at the same time for all these devices. You know, the cheaper iPhones, the Galaxy A series is going to get it later. The Galaxy S20 is going to get it first, yada, yada, yada. iPhones, not the case. Their cheapest iPhone SE2, you know, the $399 phone, same day that gets an update is the same day the iPhone 11 Pro Max gets the update and vice versa. So that is something that's really important to me. iOS 14, in my opinion, has been an interesting run for sure. It's not the best update, even performance-wise, you know. It really hasn't hindered performance that much, you know, especially, you know, it has that Apple A9 chip, which I think has always been pretty good. It has that dual-core CPU and 2 gigs of RAM. And in this day and age, in 2020, especially the later part of 2020, with us about to be getting those new iPhones, it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic and shift of how Apple is going to utilize the amount of RAM that they're going to use on their devices. Because specs on paper, you know, obviously you see 2 gigs of RAM, you might not think it's that great, but honestly, for the iPhone 6s, the performance-wise, it's a really decent performing device with the amount of RAM that it has on paper. And the fact of the matter is that Apple is going to be pushing more RAM into their devices. We're going to be getting like probably 6 gigs of RAM, maybe. Eventually we'll get 8 and 10. You really only need like 3 gigs of RAM to have like an extremely smooth experience overall on iOS. And even 2 gigs is an extremely good amount of RAM to have too. So in my opinion, the performance on iOS 14 on the iPhone 6s has been good for the most part. It's not great, it's slower than iOS 13, but it's been a pretty smooth, straight line in terms of the stability of it, in my opinion. These phones haven't really, you know, boot looped on me. And again, this is the first version of this software. When we do get iOS 14.4 and 14.7 or whatever, it's going to be going to be a smoother experience overall. It's just right now, it's not that smooth. But like I said, in due time, it will be better and it will get better overall. So performance-wise, I think it's a solid, you know, like probably like 7.5 out of 10 for how old this device is, how much it costs, and the fact that it's still supported. If I was talking about the iOS 13 performance, you know, ending off at 13.7, I still have an iPhone 6s that's on iOS 13.7, and it's a pretty good experience too. I think a majority of people are still on iOS 13 if they have this device. So in the later part of 2020, performance-wise, I think it holds up well enough for you to use. I wouldn't probably use it as a main phone, but I still think for the majority of people out there, I think they're probably going to be okay with it. It's not going to wow them, but it will get the job done. And the fact that you're still getting software updates is a really big asset for sure. Now, ending it off with the battery life, this is probably the worst aspect. I've said this for years now. It's probably the worst part about this device. It has a 1,715 mAh battery. Even if it was at that full capacity, it hasn't really been that great. Standby time isn't really that great, especially on iOS 14. I've had kind of big battery drains on my older iPhones that I mentioned before. It's not a huge deal. It's not like a groundbreaking, you know, event, but it is something to keep in mind at the end of the day. So I think for sure battery life could have been better, but it is what it is. There's really nothing we can do about it. You can always go get a battery case for this thing, be around a charger, but this is definitely one of the aspects that I really don't like about the 6S and why I probably prefer people getting an SE over this. But in terms of everything, it's a kind of sum up this whole entire video. And to answer the question, is the iPhone 6S still worth it in the later part of 2020? What I can tell you is that I think for the majority of people out there, getting an iPhone 6S is probably the lowest iPhone I would recommend to people. I'm not saying it's the worst iPhone or lowest one on the totem pole. Not the case at all. I'm saying that if I had to recommend an iPhone to somebody and they are on a complete budget, they can't spend any money over a certain amount, I would recommend them sticking with an iPhone 6s or SE. These are the oldest iPhones that are supported right now with software, meaning that if there's a problem with it, if there's an issue currently when you buy the phone, chances are if you update it, there may be an update later on, there may be an update in a week or two or a month or a year that could essentially fix this problem, which is a humongous thing to keep in mind. Now, it's not the perfect phone, you know what I mean? There's definitely some shortcomings. The screen may be a little bit too small for people. It's not really a high resolution. It's not an OLED either. The battery life is probably not that great, you know, for me especially. If I had to use it every day, I would definitely be charging it, you know, at least like 2 times a day. And, you know, you can do 4K at 60, but I still think 4K at 30 for a lot of people is great enough. You have 1080p at 60. Performance is great in my opinion for how old this device is. It's not the best. It's not, you know, better than an iPhone 11 Pro, but for a 2015 phone, I think it's actually pretty decent for sure. And the body still feels really great. You have Force Touch on it. You have a good looking display for the most part. I mean, it's like good enough. And you have iOS and you still have updates coming out for this thing too. So there are some strong suits for it. There's some reasons to pick it up. Would I pick it up? If I had like a budget of less than $70, and yeah, but for the majority of people, I would recommend, you know, sticking with an iPhone 7, 8, going up to an iPhone 10, that'd be really cool too, but that really pretty much covers it up for the most part. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.